Hello, my name is Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we go back to the 41st millennium and continue our look at building a Necron force. Whether you built an army before or this is your first time at this lark, we've got you covered both for open and narrative play, where we'll talk in terms of power, and matched play, where we'll tally up the points. Today's video, which focuses on getting you to a strike force sized army of 100 power or 2000 points, is the next natural increment in expanding your forces. Now, if you've been watching our previous videos, you'll know we've been blazing the path of two different builds. The first is an all-rounders list, for those that are more interested in diversity of models than anything particularly meta at any given time. And the second is a predominantly thematic list, building around the new Destroyer cult units. Now if you've missed them and you want to start from the very beginning of this here tale, then I'll put a link to those videos in the comments below. Kicking things off with our traditional build then, we are finally fleshing out, or not in the case of the Crons, to a battalion detachment. Not that it really has any mechanical effect on our list, but it's important that we know where we stand. With that over, our HQ hierarchy is bolstered by 1, with a swanky new Chronomancer, supplementing our already useful duo of an Overlord and a Technomancer. One of the swanky new cryptechs released in the new codex. The Chrono specialises in conferring 5-up invuln saves and charge rerolls to a lucky unit. So, you know what that means? Guess who's back? Now, before we get to that, the troop choices, I'm sad to say, are completely untouched. We've still got the 19 warriors with Gauss Reapers, accompanied by the Technomancer on a Night Scythe. And we've still got the other teensy unit of 10 warriors and a micro unit of 5 immortals. Now, at this point level, maybe it leaves you a little bit light on units with objectives secured, but no one said this was a meta list. It's just supposed to give you a solid army and ultimately variety of models so you can figure out what it is you like about playing the Necron tier. So did you guess who's back? That's right, me old muckers, me old pals. Those Scorpec destroyers have made a triumphant return to the fold, and to be honest, mostly to combo with the Chronomancer, as I've already alluded to. These units will still have a target on their back, and without any crypto thralls to protect the cryptech, it might get a little bit ropey. You've then got the death marks that are still snipering, and the Triarch Stalker is still lurking from the previous list to round out the elite slots. Moving swiftly on to the fast attack choices, you've still got the unit of Canoptek Scarab Swarms, except they've been downgraded to just a unit of 6. Could you argue that sacrificing the unit of Tomb Blades will also bring in order to keep the Swarms unit size of 9 and bring in a couple of Crypto Thralls I've just mentioned? Maybe, but just not for me, and not for the purposes of this list. You also can't get Crypto Thralls outside of the contents of the Indomitus box, as of the publishing of this video. Oh, and there's one more addition here, in the form of a unit of 3 Canoptek Wraiths. A very swift unit of predominantly melee specialists, although you can give them some 12-inch ranged weaponry if you so desire. They're a fair bit more resilient than some of their similar costing peers as well. They're only packing a moderate 3 wounds apiece, but with a 4-up invuln and 5 toughness, they'll be that little bit trickier to take down. The heavy support choices see some tweaks and additions in the form of an extra Locust Destroyer to the unit of 1 normal and 1 heavy destroyer, bulking them out to their maximum occupancy and rounding out a mobile gun platform of goodness. We're also incorporating a new vehicle, here in the form of the Doomsday Ark, one of the more imposing looking death rays you'll probably see on the tabletop. You've got some bog standard strength 4 weaponry on the sides, but it's really all about the Doomsday Cannon and its high strength, high damage capability. Because it's got the blast keyword, it's not completely overkill with lower toughness, high wound units. And both these units complement the Canoptek Doomstalker that you've already been acquainted with. So there you have your 100 power and 1972 points of vanilla Necrons. Although this isn't the final stop on our travels, as we're still going to get to that mythical 150 power 3000 point mark, but today's size list is the most common high point for casual and competitive games. Now it's important for me to point out at this point that I purposefully avoided taking named HQs. Not because they're not worth it, but because they're more of a personal choice. And they also tend to flip-flop in terms of performance. Still, whilst this will never be the most meta of lists, it was designed to stand firm against any number of opponents and challenges you might come up against. But wait, did you really think I'd leave you hanging without any super spicy, ridiculously high point models to squeeze in this size list? Nah, I've got you covered. This route is of course completely optional. But you see, the Necrons, they enslaved these kind of superstar gods called Catan, who they once worshipped. All of these Catan, of which there are 3 with models, well 4 if you count the Transcendent Catan, which we're not talking about, all take up an elite slot and cost a bunch of points. Now this is what a Catan list can look like, and the best choice in terms of strength on the battlefield is your Catan Shard of the Nightbringer. But it's also an older and quite considerably cheaper model. If however you want the new hotness in terms of models, then you'll want the Catan Shard of the Void Dragon. Like night and day in terms of the difference in model quality, but the Void Dragon also comes with a commensurately hefty increase in price. So of course, make your own mind up, they're both great units. But the Nightbringer is just a straight up melee murder machine and can comfortably take out pretty much anything in the game. Anywho's on with the show, as we have some destroyer cults to talk about, and it starts with a bit of a damp squib because the HQ slots are entirely untouched. Now we had a decision to make in line with the theme of the build, and that was whether to take a destroyer lord, and the reason I opted with not was I didn't want to pad out the list with another HQ. I couldn't afford to sacrifice the non-destroyer cult overlord, because we would then sacrifice access to command protocols by virtue of him being a noble, or the Scorpek lord and the Chronomancer, because they're both important to synergize with the rest of the build. The troop and elite choices also fall foul of the lack of cultist options. We're sticking with the 2 units of 10 warriors and 1 unit of 10 immortals, again falling a little foul of a lack of objective secured. And the elite choices remain more or less the same, except we're rocking 2 crypto thralls, more of a bodyguard unit for the Chronomancer than anything else, but it's those 2 units that work so well in tandem with our melee murder death squad of 6 Scorpek destroyers. And of course we're still bringing the little Canoptek plasma sight that could, with both this unit and the crypto thralls not taking up a battlefield role slot, and the slightly funky short range hybrid Hexmark destroyer is still here as well. The fast attack slots see a buff to the unit of 3 Tomb Blades up to a unit of 6. There's also some flexibility with any points left over to upgrade their weapons as well. But these 6 guys can certainly move some, and in a pack of 6 can create all sorts of disruption. And we're still bringing the 2 units of 3 Ophidian destroyers, the somewhat faster, somewhat weaker Scorpeks, but again they give you flexible board presence. And as we edge towards the tail end of what has been a fairly linear upgrade of units in this build, and kind of as you'd expect considering the theme, we're simply bulking up our 2 units of 1 destroyer and 1 heavy destroyer with an extra destroyer for the same reasons we did in the traditional list. However, we have made room for a dedicated transport, which acts as the final addition at this breakpoint. Those poor warriors are looking just a little bit pathetic on their own, and so a means to transport a unit of 10, do some reanimating if they get in a spot of bother, and lay down some of its own firepower was well worth the cost of admission. And so there you have the 100 power and a quite roomy for upgrades 1940 points of Destroyer Cult Necrons. There's a number of synergies to go round in this type of list, but by and large Destroyer Cults are a bit thin on the ground in terms of medium to long range weaponry, which is why the Destroyers are so important, but they are really an extremely mobile, albeit foot sloggy army. Now there aren't many of these bad boys that don't carve shizzle up though, given half the opportunity. So as we reach the penultimate step of this journey, quite by accident the overall cost of both these builds is nigh on identical. Although I haven't costed in the crypto thralls because of their relative lack of availability outside of the Indomitus box, it's mostly down to weight of models in the traditional build that meant it's caught up almost completely with the cost of the Destroyer Cults. That though is very much it for the fourth part of this series. You'll find the list in text format below for your convenience, and stay tuned for future content that will see us planning and building up to a final stop of 150 power or 3000 point onslaught armies. Or I think it's fair to say we should either go big or go home. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.